Hello, and thank you for joining A Shark's Perspective. As a marketing strategy, would you advise an advertiser to just send out a lot of pamphlets or Word docs for a marketing campaign? Then why on earth would anyone do that in their own job hunt? And are you even showing what you truly know about your field? Hopefully, you're taking a marketer's approach to building the story of you and your brand. So, if you're a fan of LinkedIn like me, then you'll enjoy today's guest. Michaela Alexis is a LinkedIn speaker, trainer, strategist, creator, and she's a subject matter expert on personal branding. And on this episode, we'll discuss creating content and sharing career and job stories, LinkedIn strategies for any generation, how to design your own career, Michaela and Mr. Unmarketing, Willy Wonka, Too Much Coffee, and the Quasimodo of sharks. So let's tune in to a millennial LinkedIn master with your favorite LinkedIn shark on this episode of A Shark's Perspective. So, Michaela, thank you so much for joining us today on A Shark's Perspective. If you would, tell us a little bit about your background and where you got to be to where you are today.
Ooh, yeah. So I feel like my story really started about 2 years ago, 3 years ago, actually. Now, in March of
So long
2016.
ago.
It's you know what? It feels like it was a really long time ago,
Yeah,
but it really was just kind of
yeah.
just yesterday. And I was laid off from a tech startup that I was working at, and it was kind of a wake up call for me because like I was a month away from my 30th birthday. And so I had all these, like, grand ideas of what 30 was gonna look like, and what I found instead was that I didn't have the big house, I didn't have the perfect family, and I couldn't even keep a job. And so I started thinking about how I was doing marketing for the brands around me, and I said, "Would I, as a strategy, tell other people to just send out, like, a whole bunch of pamphlets and wait for somebody to call them? Like, that's crazy,
Could not
right?"
agree more. Yeah.
But we're doing that as job seekers, and so what I did is actually kinda sneaky. I put a tracking code on 10 resumes, and I sent them all out because I
Good
wanted
for
to see
you.
how many
Yeah,
people I wanted to see how many people actually read. I was, like, thinking like a marketer, right?
yeah.
And only one of them was actually opened. And that was important for me because A, the strategy doesn't work, and B, part of like my job finding strategy include like a very heavy dose of confidence. I think that the confident person tends to win when it comes to your job search. And so I believe that I need to guard that confidence. So when you send out a resume and you don't hear back, it your self-esteem takes a hit, right? So I'm like, this isn't working. And so I went on LinkedIn, and some people know this story, but I reached out to a marketing idol of mine named Scott Stratton,
Yeah.
and I asked for some career advice. And not only did he respond, but a couple days later, this huge box showed up at my front door,
Yeah.
and it had like writing and marketing books. And my first article, so I started writing on LinkedIn just after reading all of these books. My first article went viral on LinkedIn called How I Landed My Dream Job in 2 weeks on LinkedIn. And that was that was like a game changer for me. I don't like to say that things happened overnight, but with the case of that article, it really did happen overnight. I went to from a couple hundred to 11,000 followers in a week.
Wow.
And more than that, I feel like I had like stumbled upon like that aha
Sure.
moment
Yeah.
where everyone was saying there's a personal and professional self. And yet I was finding that people were actually really interested not just in what I was doing, but my career journey. And I realized that there were so many YouTubers that were out there. There were so many people that were on Instagram and Facebook and sharing their stories. And yet nobody was sharing their stories at work, even though we spend so much time there.
Yeah.
And so I felt like people were really hungry for those, like, heartfelt stories about, job interviews gone terribly wrong and reporting harassment and, deciding between 2 different roles and, fear of failure and rejection. And so I started writing about those things. So I've been doing that for, like, the last 3 years, and I've gotten to run all sorts of really fun campaigns. I did a mug museum where I asked people to send in their company mug and tell me their story, and then I would push it out to my network. And I thought I would get a couple of mugs, and I ended up like, I filled up 2 bookshelves with company mugs and reached over 250, and it just got crazy because I was
Yeah.
spending most of the time talking to FedEx. And then last year we started a campaign called hashtag Let's Get Honest, where we encourage people to or professionals to get on camera and share a challenge or vulnerability that they've had to overcome in their career. And that was what I think is the first viral video campaign on LinkedIn because it reached 26 million users. And so I've been able to not only, you know, do all these really fun marketing experiences, but also I feel impact people and change the business conversation on LinkedIn at the same time. So it's been really, really fun.
So there's a lot to unpack from that. So
I know.
that was really good, and I love the tracking code, which I've thought about before. Thank God I just haven't really messed with resumes a lot. Having worked in recruiting, I know how broken the system is, so I could
Mhm.
not agree more. But we'll unpack several things out of that. One, how did you get Scott Stratton, Mr. Bun himself, Mr. Unmarketing? How did
Yeah.
you get him to respond to yours? If I send him an email
Mm.
right now, or
Yeah.
most people send him some sort of correspondence,
Mhm.
I'm sure he gets a thousand of them a day because
Yeah.
he's an amazing speaker. What do you think it was about yours that attracted him to answer your questions?
Yeah, there's a couple things. I mean, I'm Canadian and Scott's Canadian, so
Yeah,
there's like
he
this
felt sorry
Canadian
for you.
bond.
Sorry.
Yeah, and he actually lived, I didn't even realize it, but he lived in Ottawa for a bit. So we had that in common. But it's something important that I've learned when dealing with anybody is get straight to the point. I think there's so many people that are like, hi Scott, I'm a big fan. I would love to sit down and pick your brain, or I'd love to jump on a call. And for people that are busy, they don't have time to do that, right? So for me, I had like straight up asked him, "This is my situation. Do you have any advice for somebody that's in a scenario like I'm in?" And so it allowed him to just answer that question and not have to like send me paragraphs. The other thing is that again, this was way back in the day. So 3 years ago for LinkedIn is like a lifetime because this was pre-Microsoft acquisition,
Hmm.
right? So it was still a very stale and
Jurassic period.
conservative platform.
Yeah.
Yeah, and people just weren't messaging people that they didn't know. And so I saw that there was a gap there. I know Scott was like big on Twitter. I knew that like just like you mentioned, his inbox was probably full, but LinkedIn, he wasn't doing very much on LinkedIn. So if I sent him a message, and really sometimes you're just at a position, I had nothing to lose, right? Like I just went for it. And sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. In that case it did. And what it did for me really and truly is that I started to believe in the power of like kindness of strangers. And so I've tried to integrate that into all of the in quotations marketing that I do. So a lot of the campaigns that I run, like last year, I gave away a box of books for somebody that shared a story that I thought that I could help kind of turn around. And that goes a really long way on LinkedIn because so many people are working in silos where they think that their career experiences are theirs alone. And I've tried to kind of bridge the gap and notice that there's still that need for community, and community hasn't died. It just looks a little bit different than what it used to, I think.
Again, I couldn't agree with you more because as somebody who worked in recruiting, who's looked at tens of thousands of resumes, everybody's story's not. I mean, look, we're all snowflakes, unique, and that's
Yeah.
wonderful, and we got our own fingerprint that's different.
Hmm.
But creating unique content that's to stand
Mm.
out, or
Mm.
creating ways to make us stand out,
Yeah.
is really the unique part, not the fact that you worked at XYZ company and
Yeah.
did AB and was responsible for ABC. So, which I've hated. I've seen so many of those resumes. One,
Mm.
have you had any conversation with him since, with Scott? Just out of
Yeah.
curiosity.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, quite a few, especially with even with that campaign that I ran where I gave away my own
Yeah,
box. He pitched in and he
that's
sent two
amazing.
boxes of books to people that entered the contest. And he's been great as I've kind of gone into like the speaking world, and he's had all sorts of great advice there. So that's been really cool. I totally agree when it comes to, I'm a big believer in showing, not telling. So I think that, if you say that you're a creative, show that you're creative. Don't just tell people that you're creative.
Hmm.
So I was constantly looking for ways to, I don't want to say skip the line, but stand out and kind of sprinkle my personality and things. And even before I ran this whole campaign on LinkedIn, I was sending out, rather than like a paper resume, I created a Willy Wonka like style Michaela chocolate bar. And then
Nice.
my resume was a golden ticket inside. So I've always
Oh
like, why
God.
not have fun with it? It's a crappy situation, right?
Dark chocolate or milk chocolate?
It was those you remember the caramel had, like, the gold foil?
Oh yeah.
And then they changed the packaging right as I was trying to run this thing, so I'm like, "Oh my gosh," I had to go on Amazon, and it was a whole thing, but I only ended up having to use, like, 4 of the resumes before I ended up getting hired because, I mean, that's something that for sure kinda stands out in a sea of, sameness.
Then let's talk a little bit about how you began to take that and monetize it and turn it into
Mhm.
a career. Sort of elaborate
Yeah.
on what that process looked like, because it's one thing
Ugh.
to have an article
Yeah.
go viral,
Yeah.
and two, to translate it into, well, you know what? I'm going to become an entrepreneur. I'm going to live off credit cards for a while. I'm going to build this
Yeah.
business, and I'm not going
Yeah.
to sleep, and I'm going to work 80 hours a week and or a day,
Yeah.
and but how do you take that and turn that
Mhm.
into a career to where you're able to provide the coaching experience that
Yeah.
will help people?
Yeah, I'm so jealous of people that I hear their stories and they talk about how they had these entrepreneurial skills when they were babies
Yeah.
and they just grew up knowing that I call myself a very reluctant entrepreneur because I
A
I am that person
reluctantpreneur.
that yeah, exactly. I am the type of person that goes to a casino and spends $20, wins it back, and goes buys a drink. Like,
Oh,
I don't take a lot of chances, and so I kept feeling this, like, thing inside me where I was like, I'm being called to do something bigger. I'm being called, and I tried to ignore the call for years and years. And so when my first article went viral, it was obviously at the exact same time as I was hired for that dream job. And, obviously from there, I just kept writing, and I would write on the weekends, and then I would come in on Monday and act like, everything was normal. And so I was growing my community, and I got to a point about halfway through the year where people started messaging me and saying, "I don't know what you're doing on LinkedIn, but can you do it for my company?"
right.
Right? Because they saw that I was getting attention for something. And so my then bosses approached me and they asked if I wanted to partner with them and run this new branch of the company called Grade A Digital. And so I launched that agency in March of 2018 or 17. Now I'm losing track. Anyways, um, and I felt like I had made it. Like I felt like I had
Yeah.
finally achieved everything that I wanted to. I had the prestige. I had this beautiful corner office. Like the view wasn't great, but the office was fantastic. And I felt like it was 7 years of grinding it out had come to fruition for me. And I realized a few months in, I'm like, "Oh my god, I'm miserable." And I never had stopped to question whether or not building a business was my dream or society's dream.
Hmm.
And so I realized pretty quickly I wasn't that person, and I had talks with my CEO, and I saw his eyes light up when he talked about building businesses and how it was always his dream, and I was like, "I'm not feeling that spark. I'm not
Yeah.
feeling that at all." And so
You.
it all really came to a head, in Costa Rica. I went to Costa Rica and I did, a zip lining tour,
Yeah.
and at the end of the ziplining tour, I did this thing, it's called the Tarzan swing. So you basically like they hook you up and you swing off of a cliff. It's really safe. Um, and I went from like shrieking with delight because I'm like, it's so cool. And then I just started bawling. And the poor like tour guides were like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" I'm like, "I'm fine. I'm swinging on
That's
a rope,
great.
just yelling, I'm fine." And I realized that I was crying because I couldn't remember the last time where I could just play and laugh and I could just be myself, not
Hmm.
this role that I had created for myself. And so that was really, really tough because I knew as soon as I got back home that I had to kind of move on. I was really, really lucky during though because I did start to sense where my passion lied, and it
Sure.
was, I would go in and run these workshops before we started services with clients, and as soon as I started teaching, I had that spark. I had that feeling of, like, being in love with what you're doing, and then I started speaking more on stage, and I just loved teaching. I loved it, and so I finally got to a point where we looked at the numbers and I knew that I would be able to walk away and sustain myself just doing what I love, which is a dream come true. But it was also really hard because I had had so many people, I mean, 100,000 people that had been watching this journey to get to this dream job point that I had gotten to. And then I had to turn around and write an article and say, hey, I landed the dream and
Hmm.
it wasn't, it was actually a nightmare. And so I had a lot of people that were supportive, but I also had people that were really disappointed in me. And that's kind of like the flip side of, everyone wants to have those viral articles and they want to have all that engagement, but you also have a responsibility to those people. And sometimes they're going to make choices that other people might not agree with. But I've been super, super lucky to be able to go into this full time. So now I just get to travel the world teaching about my passion for LinkedIn, which is the coolest job ever.
No kidding. But your story, I think speaks to every miserable person on the planet who realizes they're
Oh
miserable as
shit, what have I
well.
done?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I've been there many a days myself. When you figure out, though, for you at least, you figured out first it was that you wanted to teach. I'm
Mhm.
certain that you see a lot of people that in your generation,
Yeah.
and I'll say this only because it is one of the URLs on your page, those damn millennials, but a lot of people in that group also want to do that
Yeah.
without necessarily identifying
Oh,
the
yeah.
why or the
Yeah.
cause or the
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
How do you sort of, what advice do you give them to kind of rope them back into being a speaker telling a story or a cause or something that
Yeah.
moves people as opposed to wanting to be the person who not narcissistically only. I
Mhm.
know that people are, hopefully most people aren't that shallow, but make it more of just you're not up there so that people see
Yeah.
Michaela speak. It's not a selfie speech. It's a speech
Right.
about helping people advance in their
Mhm.
career.
Yeah, I think that and I completely understand where you're coming from. I think that there is this whole wave of people, and I think it's across generations right now where people wanna be, motivational, inspirational speakers. And that and I've mentored some people that are coming out of school, and they went straight into that
Yeah.
mode.
Well, it's like if you
And
ask them, "What do you want to talk about? How do you want to
Mhm.
motivate them?" I don't know, but I want to
Yeah,
motivate
well,
them.
and I think that, I think it comes down to we all want love and affection and attention and want to be heard. And I think that a lot of people see the speaking path as a way to have the applause and have the attention. That doesn't last. It just doesn't. I mean, I
Right.
know when I started on LinkedIn, I remember my first viral article and I was like, I was drinking champagne, like I was celebrating.
Hmm.
And then it happens again and you're like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then happens again, you're like, oh, okay, that's cool. It does wear off, right? So it's all about going into things with the right intention. There's a big difference between doing something because you think that it's glamorous or that you think that it's exciting versus looking into someone's eyes in your audience and seeing that spark, that moment that you know that you said something that could change the course of their career.
Exactly.
There's no comparison between the two of them. So, I mean, when it came to LinkedIn, I spent years just keeping my head down, learning the platform, breaking as many things as I could, experimenting with everything because I've seen so many of those experts and I never wanted to be that person. I wanted to be able to go out and teach and know with full confidence that I had the ability to impact people's lives.
So for LinkedIn in particular, then
Yeah.
when you've got people that sign up for the course
Yeah.
and they're starting to work through building out and trying to replicate you, or at
Yeah.
least build a following, what are the
Mhm.
primary things that they need to focus on other than building just a good profile and pick and
Sure.
things like that?
Yep.
I think I'm really focused in on the engagement they have with others, the kind of
Yeah.
content, because obviously you get to a point with LinkedIn where a lot of people will encourage you to go connect with 20 people
Mhm.
a day or 100 people a day or whatever the number is. But at some
Yeah.
point then you can kind of turn that off and you've got 100 and 1,000 and more trying to reach out to you and connect with you per day.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. I mean, the first thing is that, and I explained to people right off the bat, I'm like, LinkedIn is not, I mean, it used to be considered a place that you just shared a resume.
Yeah.
And it's still, there's some industries where I'll walk in and people will actually be confused. They're like, I'm not looking for a job. And that's even in 2019. So I think the first thing to note is that LinkedIn is the world's largest networking event that's open 24/7.
Hmm.
And the reason that I tell people that is because it shifts their mindset so that they stop just like I was at an event, I don't know if you know Ron Tite. He's like a fellow Canadian, and he has this term called pitch slap. And
Yeah,
I that's a perfect example of, like, going online and just pitch slapping people, and that's what ends up happening on LinkedIn more than any other platform because people are like, "Well, people are on LinkedIn because they're okay to be sold to." That is true, people are receptive to being sold to, but not before they like and trust you.
absolutely.
And so I think that if you can shift your mindset and say, "Okay, I'm in this digital networking event. How am I going to approach people?" And what you would do at a networking event is that you wouldn't walk up to somebody and be like, "Here's my card. Here, let me shank you with my card, and
Yeah,
here's my pamphlet, and this is what I do." You'd introduce yourself. You'd have this small talk that we all complain about, but it's something that all humans do. It's called social grooming. It's because people are trying to feel out if the person that they're speaking to has the same values. And so you need to do some of that on LinkedIn. So I tell people, stop pitching people, just shake hands on LinkedIn. So what that actually looks like is share if you listen to a really fantastic podcast on your way to work,
like a
talk about
shark's
it.
perspective.
Yeah, talk about
Exactly.
the sharks. There you go. Share the things that are interesting to you. Share the things that are important to you because people aren't going to look at your profile until you've said something that sparks that instant connection with the person you're trying to reach.
100%
So I
agree.
think that if you can shift your mindset from trying to impress people to just trying to connect with them, it changes everything. And even when it comes to your profile, I like to think of profiles as your home, as like your career museum. And so if you look at my summary, I actually have a free, like a checklist that you can download, and that's part of it. And the reason that I did that, I don't see enough people doing that, is that I thought about, okay, I'm opening the door to my house. What happens when somebody comes to your home? Well, you offer them a hot or cold beverage, right? And what what actually happens on LinkedIn is that people are not they're speaking in the third person. So it's like Michaela did this and Michaela won these awards, and you're immediately disconnecting yourself from the audience. My summary is first person perspective. So, hi, I'm Michaela. This is what I'm all about. Before you continue on to my services, I want to give you this free gift. Thank you for coming. And so it really replicates having a home. And I think for most of my clients at least, once they can kind of feel less pressure because they're just inviting somebody into their home and being themselves, it really does make a massive difference, not only for optimizing their profile, but also for creating content because they're not trying to impress anybody.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, especially, with salespeople, because I've had so many people pitch me stuff, and I laugh every salesperson and business development person that comes in, and
Mhm.
you know why they've connected. And I have no
Yeah.
problem with the connections, but it's almost like you can set a countdown clock between 30 seconds to their sales
Mhm.
pitch or 1 week before they sort of get enough bravery in them to go out there and say, hey, here's my sales babble, and here's a link I'd love to share, and
Yep.
it offers me nothing of value.
Yep.
It's like an advertisement that has no context to it. I'm not a target for
Yeah.
them, whether they think of that as well. But they haven't
Yeah.
built any rapport with me. They've offered nothing of value, and that's just really where, unfortunately, the shift is it's killing them, because podcasts, to your point, if you wanted to connect with somebody, listen to my podcast, reach out to Michaela and say, I heard you on A Shark's Perspective. You were amazing.
So
You said
yeah,
this and that.
exactly.
Don't
Mhm.
just say, hey, Michaela, I saw you were, subconsciously they're saying, I saw you were on this guy's podcast. There was a link to your bio. Let me
Mhm.
spam you with this
Mhm.
message and hope that you'll contact me and we can have a coffee or a 15-minute conversation that's worth nothing to you, but I'm trying to make my quota. The end.
A 100%,
Yeah.
100%. And I do understand the grind, so I do
Yeah.
I try
Yeah.
to
It's
be
a tough
I
job
try to
they've
be
got.
nice to people, always, but sometimes it kinda drives me crazy because I'm just thinking there's a much better strategy to all of this, and, certainly, I mean, I just did a video the other day where I talked about those happy birthday and happy anniversary messages that everybody hates on LinkedIn. And so I started thinking about, okay, well, how can I use those to reconnect with that person, right?
Yeah.
Because they're making some sort of like it's not a very minimal effort, of course, we all know that, but they've sent you a message. So what can you do with that? And so what I do is I send them a joke, like I'll like kind of reconnect with them. and then I'll ask them if they're interested in my checking out my LinkedIn profile checklist.
Hmm.
So why not use that as kind of like your in, and then give them a gift, and
Exactly.
hopefully they can end up in your world. To me, that's been a lot more in terms of social selling. That's been a much more effective strategy. But really, at the end of the day, this is all about community building, all about relationship building. And I truly believe that the more time and energy that you invest into your LinkedIn presence, the more that you're going to get out of it.
So a lot of what you're providing coaching on that are helping these
Yeah.
people build out their profiles, obviously with the diversity in ages, and
Mhm.
you know, you even talk about on your own
Yeah.
profile in your business that you're a millennial LinkedIn
Hmm.
master.
Yeah.
Talk about the difference in approach in age groups for
Yeah.
really the different folks that are now. You've got the, you know, the baby boomers
Yep.
who have a ton of experience, but maybe you're
Yep.
on the back end of their career. You've got a lot of the middle-aged folks that aren't baby boomers yet, that bring
Yep.
20, 30 years experience but don't know the social channels. You've got
Sure.
the millennial generation, which is,
Yep.
you know, digital natives who understand that well, and then the
Hmm.
Gen Z who are a different
Yep.
mindset altogether. But those are four different
Yes.
diverse audiences that you have to coach.
Sure.
Kind of at a high level,
Yep.
unpack the different things that each of them
Sure.
see and how to move ahead.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Let's say like
Yeah.
close-ish to retirement.
Yes.
So that group,
Well, C-level people.
yeah, so I tend to work really well with that group because so this is a big problem is that a reason that there's a huge like sharp divide between younger generations and older generations is that there's a lack of respect between the two of them. So when I go in and I'm talking to somebody that is a baby boomer, a C-level suite, the first thing that I do is I allow them to just that small talk, right? Talk
Hmm.
about the sports, talk about the weather, talk about their pets, and then I asked them, "If I were to walk into this room and just pitch you, how would you feel without you kinda going through this whole, like, the small talk thing?" And they will always tell me, "Well, it'd be really strange if you did that." And then I ask them, "Well, why are you doing that on LinkedIn?" Right? So if I can kind of compare what they're doing offline to online, it really does make a big difference. And I think for a lot of, the older generation, the biggest problem is that people don't have enough respect for people that have built businesses without social media. Like, the fact that you can build a business from your couch is pretty phenomenal, and we
Hmm.
forget how phenomenal it actually is, where some people have spent 20 to 30 years grinding it out, driving
Yeah.
to a nearby networking event, like, that is insane. So, you have to also have appreciation for what that person has done to get to where they are. So again, going back to like that analogy of LinkedIn being like the world's largest networking event, if you can make that comparison where you say, "Hey, you can do what you've been doing all these years, but you can do it like from home. Like you can go home after you're finished work and just send messages to people and just connect with them online and share
Right.
videos and all of that stuff." Then it becomes, "Oh, this is like just a different way of doing business rather than the better way of doing business." Because I think both there's value in both of them too. I think the purpose of LinkedIn is always to get those online relationships offline and meet people in person. So I try to combine the two. So those are the baby boomers. The generation underneath, what is it? Generation
Generation
Z?
X.
X. Generation X, their issue is that they were born and raised to believe that there is a personal and professional self. So a lot of the clients that I have within that age group, they really struggle to share more of their personality for fear of coming across as unprofessional. So the business world is dramatically changing, and that is a huge barrier or challenge for that age group. The way I get past that, again, is just mindset training, and, the more that people can kind of wrap their head around just connecting with people and how they would speak to somebody at a networking event,
Hmm.
the easier it becomes. With my group, the millennials, their biggest problem is, yes, they've grown up with technology, but they don't have any strategy around it, right? We're so used to kind of, like, openly talking about things, so it's almost like the opposite of the generation above us, where it's
Yeah.
like, no, that is unprofessional. You're not supposed to talk about partying on a Friday on a Monday morning on LinkedIn, right? So, and that's, I mean, that's a very extreme
Yeah.
example. But for them, it's really kind of making those distinctions between, yeah, this should be like post this on Instagram, you can post this on Facebook. But even when it comes to those channels as well, you have to understand that people are also looking you up there. So just have a very clear boundary about what's going to go online and what remains offline. So it's creating those guidelines for that group, and then the generation underneath
Yeah. Which are just
millennials.
starting to,
Yeah.
yeah,
So their issue is so these are basically students. Their issue is a lack of self-esteem because they've grown up seeing these articles and these videos of these super successful people, right? You see Gary Vee is everywhere and Richard
exactly.
Branson is everywhere and Oprah is everywhere, and people idolize these people, so they believe that a strong personal brand happens after you've made it. When I have to go in and convince them, no, if you are born, you have a voice, if you're going to class, if you have thoughts on a particular subject, get online and share it. Because if you can share your journey from when you're an intern, first of all, intern stories are really juicy.
Hmm.
But beyond that, showing your journey from the very beginning, it makes people love you even more. The amount of people that I have that will come up to me and be like, I've been following you since you first landed your job at grade A, and that was only 3 years ago. Well, imagine if you started writing when you were 18, 19 years old,
Hmm.
right? So those are kind of the distinctions, at least that I see between the groups.
So if we looked at LinkedIn from not
Hmm.
that long ago to where it's become like such an amazing, indexable, searchable
Yeah.
social business channel, when you look back to its origins, it's a lot different probably than what we thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
where have you seen it grow to where it is today?
So, yeah, LinkedIn way back in the day,
Yeah,
I guess that was like a
long back
decade
when there
ago.
were black and white TVs, and
It was the original intention was it was a very small community. You
yeah,
connect with people that you know. It's almost like a Rolodex. It's great for people that are looking for work. So it kind of was meant to replace like small towns. And what it morphed into instead, especially with the acquisition from Microsoft, is that now it's this huge content creation platform where people are networking, and people like me that it's not like I'm in the middle of nowhere, but Ottawa is very small on the grand
yeah,
scale of things. And so the opportunities that I've had to, last year I worked with Crown Plaza and IHG, and did a video campaign with Fast Company. It was in the New York Times. Like those opportunities wouldn't exist for somebody like me, 10, 20 years ago.
agreed.
And so I can certainly see I think that there's going to be more of an integration between your personal brand and or in your corporate brand. So I'm really, really, really interested in LinkedIn pages right now. I've been growing my page since last September very steadily. I am one of those people that you tell me I can't do something and then I just want to prove you wrong. So my goal is to get to 10,000 followers, very, very engaged followers, just to go to small to medium sized businesses and say, hey, I'm an individual and I'm doing this organically. Like, let's make this happen for you. But what's really interesting with LinkedIn pages is that soon you're going to have the ability to invite all of your connections to follow your page, which it sounds really funny saying out loud because Facebook did this years
Hmm.
ago.
Yeah,
But it is an incentive to not only focus on growing your company brand, but also focus on growing the personal brands within your organization, right? Because the more people that you can invite, obviously, the bigger your funnel is for your company page. You're also going to have things like a blog that lives within your company page, which is really exciting, right? Rather than just having it live on your company or your website, now you're going to be able to create what, and I do consider it right now, your LinkedIn page is your service hub, and you don't have to take people off the platform to be able to close them or get them to take action and call you or schedule an appointment. And so I think LinkedIn is really going to be spending a lot of time on that. I know that I've talked to the product manager of LinkedIn Pages, and they've told me that their focus for the next year is really on helping small to medium sized businesses with organic traction on the LinkedIn platform, which is the most exciting news I think I've heard in a long time. I mean, how cool is
yeah,
that? When does the platform tell you openly, like, yeah, if people create content, we want to help boost them? Because they're not at the point right now where people are creating enough content to even be able to sell them ads. So this is their main focus right now. So I do definitely see that there's going to be more of a push towards LinkedIn pages. And then, I mean, there's all sorts of cool, really fun features on LinkedIn right now. I just did my very first LinkedIn
Did
Live.
you? Yeah, I was just
I
about to ask
did.
about LinkedIn Live.
I did. It was a little bit rocky, as all all first times are. So hopefully it'll get a little bit smoother over time. But LinkedIn Live, super, super fun new feature. LinkedIn Pulse, I'm guessing that they're going to start bringing in new features. I know that they've been playing around with that subscribe button where people can create a weekly or monthly series. So that might be interesting. LinkedIn Groups is something that they've spent a lot of R&D dollars in, and I would love to see that expanded into something really fantastic because I think that there is a lot of potential there. They've also introduced the document upload feature, which a lot of people don't find that super fun to upload PDFs, but I think it's really great for branding. So I think that you're going to see a lot more companies that are going to be looking into training for all of their staff.
You're in Ottawa. There are not
Yes.
a lot of Sharks unless San Jose Sharks come to visit and play hockey. But you're on a Sharks perspective. You're talking to a dummy named Shark. What is your favorite kind of shark and why?
Ooh,
Actually, I think Shark's on my LinkedIn profile, so I don't feel as bad for asking that as well.
I this is gonna be an interesting answer. I would say a hammerhead shark because they're kind of goofy looking, and they're relatively harmless. So that kind of captures who I am.
Hammerhead is like the new authentic shark. You know, it's the
It's
Quasimodo
so
looker of
cool
sharks.
looking.
Yeah. Well, Michaela, it's that special time in the show. Are you ready for the 5 most interesting and important questions that you're going to be asked today?
Oh my goodness. Okay, let me grab some coffee.
All right.
Okay, we're good.
All right. Number 1, Generation X or Generation Z?
Can I say both?
No, you have to
I
pick
like
one
to
or
keep
the
it
other.
PC.
Which one pays the
Um,
bills? That's the smart one to go with.
oh, great. Then Generation X.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I'm
Yeah,
so
it's not a
sorry.
lot of third graders. You know, you're trying to build that audience for the future. It's over. All right.
Oh no.
Number 2 is a coffee lover as well. Medium roast question for you because that's your gig.
Mhm.
Pike's Place or
Mhm.
Breakfast Blend?
Pike's Place, 100%. I actually have that on my kitchen counter right now.
Not bad. Number 3, Canadian A or Canadian sorry?
That has to be a both. Like
Okay,
there's
that is
there's not a single
acceptable.
conversation where I don't have both.
Yeah.
So
Number 4, you talked about Willy Wonka earlier, so I had to throw this in. Johnny Depp or Gene Wilder?
oh, Gene Wilder. Oh my
Thank you.
gosh. Who says Johnny Depp? What kind of monster would do that?
Generation Z that hasn't seen the earlier version, who
Well, good thing I didn't choose them, right?
who doesn't realize that that's a spray tan, not CGI, on the Oompa Loompas. So, number 5, and the most important question that you're going to be asked today
Okay.
is biscuits or cornbread?
Ooh. What about like a hybrid, like a corn biscuit
Okay, now that's crazy talk,
or a
and it's
brisket?
brilliant, and I've thought of it before, but at least for this
I
show,
like
so my
carbs.
head doesn't explode, you have to pick one, but I
Yep.
love your mindset already.
You know what? I'll say cornbread because we have so many options for biscuits in Canada, but cornbread is not something that we either do or do very well here.
Interesting. I'm trying to think which, I guess maple syrup goes better with biscuits, so.
I put on both.
Well, that's true. So, Michaela, where can people find out more about you, learn more about
Yeah.
your thought leadership on LinkedIn, your business as well, and more?
Yeah, so, well, a couple places. So my website is mickalexis.com. I keep it nice and short. That's MICK Alexis.com. You can also find me hanging out on LinkedIn far too often.
Yeah.
My name is Michaela, just Michael with an A, Alexis. And you can also follow my company page if you're interested in LinkedIn training specific and all sorts of really fun new features that are coming out on LinkedIn. I also include those on my company page.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Michaela, for being with us today on A Shark's Perspective.
This was a blast, and now I'm craving cornbread.
Exactly.
So there was my conversation with Michaela Alexis, a LinkedIn speaker, trainer, strategist, creator, and she's a subject matter expert on personal branding. Let's take a look at 3 key takeaways from my conversation with her. First, the way people get hired today is so freaking broken, and it has been for a very long time. She brings up a good reminder of how she never heard back from resume submissions, like ever, and no one does. The system is so broken. I'll do a lot more shows on your personal brand and how you should position yourself for a job hunt. But know this, your LinkedIn profile has to be optimized and it has to be killer. In my own career past working some in recruiting, your career story is unique, but unfortunately the way you put that on a resume makes you look like everyone else to a recruiter. Never be surprised when they don't get back to you because you think you look like a perfect fit. Really show what you know and don't rely on a few paragraphs in a Word doc to frame you. You should constantly be creating content for your career brand. Don't rely on a responsible for this or responsible for that comment in your resume ever. Take the opportunity to truly show what you know and take advantage of a much more robust channel than a Word doc or a PDF. Look, a resume holds you back. Show the world what you know how to do and take advantage of how a great channel like LinkedIn can help you do it. Create thought leadership blog posts and post them on LinkedIn. Record a video of yourself speaking to a group about a subject. Be creative and take the time to express your knowledge in a better way when and where it's needed. Second, I couldn't agree more with her that not enough people share their stories about their jobs and also the job search journey. You spend 8 hours a day at a job and a lot of time after thinking about your career. LinkedIn is a great channel, if you will, that should help you, if done correctly, to elevate that career. Have conversations, learn and network, share career stories and struggles that don't resemble what you might see not always looking very authentic on Instagram. Third, salespeople especially, please listen. You must shift your mindset, and as she references, stop pitch slapping everyone. Give me or anyone else something of value. Stop selling. Shake hands on LinkedIn. Great point from Michaela, and I'll quote, people aren't going to look at your profile until you've said something that sparks that instant connection with the person you're trying to reach. So I think that if you shift your mindset from trying to impress people to just trying to connect with them, it changes everything. Furthermore, to her point on connecting with Scott Stratton, get straight to the point. I agree. People are busy. Skip the dance. Most people see through it. Got a question? Send me an email to kenneth@asharksperspective.com. It's been my privilege to have this time with you. Please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, but save the bad sales pitches. And join us on the next episode of A Shark's Perspective.